Good morning, sir. Good morning, classmates. Today, we will discuss the system's documentation techniques.
Intended learning outcomes. At the end of this module, you should be able to prepare and use data flow diagrams to understand, evaluate, and document information systems. Prepare and use flowcharts to understand, evaluate, and document information systems. Lastly, is to prepare and use business process diagrams to understand, evaluate, and document information systems. We have learned about the transaction processing and enterprise resource planning, and in addition we were able to make journal entries of business transactions.
Document system is a system used to receive, store documents, and it reduces paper. In our generation, we highly use technology that was really helpful to us. Accountants must be able to read documentation and understand how a system works in order to help them more by organizing very complicated systems into a form that can be more readily understood and helping others to understand the pre-existing system. Sarbanes-Oxley Act is an act that requires every internal controls must be certified as a financial statement in order to be safe, every inventors, and to protect them from any fraud. Data flow diagram, it illustrates where the data comes, what are the processes, and what are the destination of the data. It can be used to map out an existing system and make it better or to plan out a new system for implementation. The most important things in data flow diagram that is to keep the program organized. Programmings use data flow diagram to plan exactly how their new program is going to accomplish its extended purposes.
Data flow diagrams or DFD. It focuses on the data flows for processes, sources, and destinations of the data and data stores. DFD are visually simple, can be used to represent the same process at a high abstract or detailed level. Ini-illustrate ng DFD or data flow diagrams kung saan galing yung data, ano yung process, at ano ang destination ng data. It is important especially kung yung system ay highly database. So now, let's proceed with the 4 symbols in data flow diagram. First is the data flow. Yung arrow na ito ay nag-i-indicate ng direction ng data flow from beginning to the end. Nagre-represent ito ng flow of information. Second is the process. Ito yung work, action, or activity na ginagawa or pinaperform sa data para mag-transform or ma-distribute sa another process, data store, or data destination. Third is the data store. Ang data store naman ay hindi nag-generate ng anumang operation but simply holds data for later access. Nire-represent nito ang storage ng persistent data na required na pinroduce ng process. Simply, this is your database. And last is the data destination or sink and data source, sometimes referred as external entities. This element can represent human, system, and subsystem. Dito nanggagaling or napupunta yung certain data.
Basic data flow diagram elements. In this data flow diagram, you have a data sources, data destination, process, you have data flows, you have where the storage of the data is, and to see the destinations are the same and the circle is a process. How data flow diagram works. Ang isang data flow diagram ay nagmamapa ng flow of information para sa anumang proseso o system. Gumagamit ito ng mga symbols tulad ng rectangle, circle at arrow kasama ang mga maiikling text label upang ipakita mga input ng data and output, storage point at mga ruta sa pagitan ng bawat destination. What is the importance of basic data flow diagram elements? A data flow diagram shows the way information flows through a process or a system. Kabilang dito ang mga input at output ng data, mga data store at iba't ibang sub-processes na pinagdadaanan ng data. Ano nga ba ang advantage nito para sa atin? It helps us to understand the functioning and the limits of a system. Ito ay isang graphical na representation na napakadaling maunawaan dahil nakakatulong ito na makita ang mga nilalaman. The data flow diagram represent detailed and well-explained diagram of system components. And the purpose of basic data flow diagram elements is a data flow diagram show how data is processed within a system based on inputs and outputs. Ginagamitan nito ng mga visual na simbolo upang kumakatawan sa daloy ng information, mga pinagmula ng data at patutunguhan, at kung saan ini-stored ang data. Data flow diagrams are often used as a first step toward redesigning a system. The data sources is in a rectangular box. It can be a database where you get the information, so your the sources are usually documents, whether an electronic hard copy, and it portrays a source of information. The data flow is an arrow showing direction of flow. It represents a pathway for data. Ito yung landas kung saan nagfo-flow yung information. And it illustrates the movement of data from one entity process to another. A data flow line is supported by text stating what data is being sent or retrieved. The data flow, ito yung mga arrows na kailangan ng label ng data inputs para malaman ang flow ng mga data sa loob ng system. The next is the process. Process is and transform incoming data flow into outgoing data flow. Ito yung mga gawain or actions na isinasagawa sa data upang ang mga ito ay mabago na naka-stored or distributed. Ito rin yung process ay ginagamit para malaman o ma-declare kung saan magagamitin ang mga data inputs. The data store. Data store is place where data are stored. Example, text, image, video files, audio files, other documents, and files. And a location where data is saved to or retrieved from, such as database. Yung data store ay nagsisilbing lalagyanan ng mga data inputs na kinakailangan o nire-required sa loob ng system. The last is the destinations, objects na kung saan outside the system with which the system is communicates, sometimes referred to as external entities. The data flow diagram are visually simple way can be used to represent the same process at a high abstract or detailed level. Maybe we will be working on this in our homework and inside the project. We wanna make sure we will understand how they did the flows and the words come from.
Here's another example of basic data flow diagram. Movie rental system. We go to an external entity. They present their membership card. The membership card will be scanned. It be scanned and checked against the customer database. And that will bring up the user details. You will be scanned against the database based on its barcode and will produce its details based on the movie's cost. And the customer's payment, the transaction will be processed. This will be recorded in transaction database. From there, a receipt will be printed and the customer will get the receipt as well as movies. As we can see, the data flow diagram, each circle represents all the processes of the system.
Now, we will proceed to basic guidelines for creating a DFD. First, of course, we need to understand the system that we are trying to represent or that you are trying to represent. Next, a DFD is a simple representation, meaning that you need to consider what is relevant or kung anong kailangan na isama. Next, start with a high-level context diagram. It identifies the flows of information between the system and external entities. The entire software system is shown as a single process. Use additional DFT at a detailed level to show how data flows within the system. Next, identify and group all the basic elements of the DFT, where effective labels can help someone unfamiliar with the system understand the objectives, functions, and features of the system better. Next, name data elements with descriptive names. Use action verbs for processes such as update, edit, prepare, validate, and etc. Give each process a sequential number to help the reader navigate from the abstract to the detailed levels. Lastly, edit, review, refine your DFD para gawin siyang mas madaling basahin at mas madaling maintindihan. I want to add common errors while constructing DFT. First, black holes. It is a processing step may have input flows but no output flows. Next, miracles. A processing step may have output flows but no input flows. Last, gray holes. It is a processing step may have outputs that are greater than the sum of its inputs. Always remember that there is one rule that we need to keep in mind is each process should have at least one input and one output.
I'm sure we are all familiar with flowchart, as we use this to make a visual presentation of the sequence of steps and decisions needed to perform a process. This is a very useful tool, as they make a process easy to understand at a glance. Flowchart shows the sequence and interconnection. By the use of few words and some simple symbols, we clearly understand the interrelationship of each stage. Flowchart can also be used to document visually any type of business system. Examples are manufacturing process, service process, and a project plan. Flowcharts tend to consist of four main symbols. First is elongated circles, also known as terminators. It signifies the start and end of a process. Second is rectangles. It represents the instructions or actions. Third is diamonds that highlight where you make a decision. And fourth is parallelograms that show the input and output of a process. All these symbols are connected by one another. It shows the flow of activity to the next. There are other flowchart symbols, named as document symbols, data symbols, input and output symbols, and merging and connecting symbols. Let's describe information system showing input and output. Input and output, it shows where and how data is coming in and out throughout your process. Second is information activities. It is a process for coordinating the information that teams communicate with one another. Third is data storage. It does not generate any operations but simply holds data for later access. Fourth is data flow. It represents the movement of data between external entities, processes, and data stores. It is represented with an arrow symbol which indicates the direction of flow. Lastly is decision steps. It visualizes the decision-making process by mapping out different courses of action as well potential outcomes.
Types of flowcharts. Documents. Document shows the flow of documents and data for a process, useful in evaluating internal controls. Document flowcharts. These flowcharts display the flow of paper and electronic documents among the various units of a business. This flowchart represents a powerful tool that helps analysts to understand, analyze documents, and improve work process inside an organizations. And these have the purpose of showing existing controls over the document flow through the components of a system. System flow charts. System flow charts depicts the data processing cycle for a process. System flow charts are a way of displaying how data flow in a systems and how decisions are made to control events. And to illustrate, symbols are used. They are connected together to show what happens to data and where it goes. System flowcharts show the flow of data to and through the major components of a system such as data entry, program, storage, media, processors, and communications network. Program flowcharts. Program flowcharts illustrates the sequence of a logics in the system process. Program flowchart shows the sequence of instructions in a single program or subroutine, as well as a graphical representations of the sequence of operations in information system or program. The program flowchart is a data flow that shows the data flow while writing a program or algorithm. It allows user to explain the process quickly as they collaborate with others. Flowcharts help programmers to develop most efficient coding because they can clearly see where the data is going to end up. And program flowcharts help programmers figure out where potential problem areas and helps them with debugging or cleaning up code that is not working.
Guidelines for drawing flowcharts. Understand the system you are trying to represent. Identify business processes, documents, data flows, and data processing procedures. Organize the flowchart so as it reads from top to bottom and left to right. Name elements descriptively. Edit, review, refine to make it easy to read and understand. Drawing flowcharts. Of course, you need to know, understand, and have enough knowledge on what you will be doing. Flowchart is sequential, so it is really important to arrange it in order and name their parts descriptively. Then, this chart has titles and every step has its own data. It is a process of what you will be doing. It is more likely a guidelines of what to do that has start and has an ending. Business process diagrams is a visual way to represent the activities in a business process. Intent is that all business users can easily understand the process from a standard notation, BPMN, or Business Process Modeling Notation, can show the organizational unit performing the activity. Is what every flowchart should have. A start or a terminator has an oval shape and indicates the beginning or end of a program in your diagram. Next is initial data entry. A parallelogram-shaped data denotes either the input or output of information in your flowchart diagram. Then, the dynamic connector, or the arrows, show the direction that the process flows and represents line connector that automatically routes between the shapes it connects using a right-angled line. The next one is data processing. A process is represented as a rectangle and denotes any process or action step to be carried out. Another one is data valid. Is the data valid? Yes or no? A decision is represented as a diamond shape and indicates decision point between two or more paths in your flowchart diagram. After a decision point, the program should continue along one or two routes. Then, procedure call. A predefined process is represented as a double-line rectangle and indicates a marker for another process step or series of process flow steps that are formally defined elsewhere. This shape also commonly depicts sub-processes. The next is output result, and after it is the ending.